Hello once again, and welcome to another edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. I'm joined by the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch, as well as 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director, Ryan Young. I'm GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director, Doug Falconer. And first of all, once again this week, another storm system has moved through Saskatchewan. Kevin, you were in the southwestern part of the province on your farm. Did you get much out of this latest system?
No, not as of Friday 2:30 when we're taping this. I left the farm near Keebree this morning and just arrived here in Saskatoon. As you get closer and closer to Saskatoon, more and more snow here. So a skiff of snow down at the farm, blowing around a fair bit. They would probably welcome extra moisture, but been really cold temperatures at night in some parts of the province. The continued delays and the late spring are becoming worrisome. If there's some areas with substantial old snow and new snow on top of that, and seeding is quite some time away, a couple of weeks perhaps at best case scenario in some areas of the province. Even more delays than that will start to become worrisome in those regions.
And how about the Regina area, Ryan?
It's kind of a similar story here compared to the last time we had a snowfall event where we just had enough snow to cover the ground, and it's kind of more blowing snow at this point. And there was a couple times there where kind of shifted to rain a little bit because it was warm enough for that. So wouldn't be surprised if it melted in the next couple of days, which according to the forecasts here around Regina, it kind of looks like it's going to warm up towards the end of the weekend into early next week. So it'll pretty much all be gone. But I could imagine, Doug, in the Yorkton area, has it changed much at all?
Yeah, here we had pretty much no snow until yesterday afternoon. It started to rain, and we had a little decent shot of rain, and then it turned to snow, and then it snowed on and off throughout most of the night, and it's still snowing on and off right now. I think it looks worse than it is because of the wind. The wind is really blowing that snow around, but it is causing some visibility issues and obviously some raw, cool temperatures here in the Yorkton area as well. Also, we wanted to talk a little bit about canola prices. And Ryan, you had a chance to speak with David Derwin from Ventum Financial about canola and how it's been kind of staying steady.
That's right. He's kind of described the July canola contract as kind of trading sideways, but on the upward trend overall. He said the price has actually been going up since the beginning of this year. The last we spoke on Monday, he said the price a couple months ago was right around that 710 to $730 range, something like that. And then over the last couple weeks, it was a little higher than that. So things are looking pretty good from that standpoint. And he said we're kind of entering into a typically seasonal upswing when it comes to prices. But if it'll stay up there will largely depend on a couple major things. One, obviously, the weather that we're getting. And number two is geopolitical factors, mostly the conflict in the Middle East and how that's going to end, or if it will end, that remains to be seen. So he said that nonetheless, where the prices are right now, it's kind of a good opportunity for producers to, lock in some decent prices. As if my math serves me well, it's right around that $15 a bushel acre range. So that's good if you're kind of looking for that sort of price. So yeah, that's kind of where the trends are right now.
Kevin, I'm sure you're keeping a close eye on canola. I'm not sure if it's in your plans for spring seeding this year, but obviously you're always keeping an eye on the canola price.
I do actually plan to seed some canola this spring. Not usually a canola grower, and I have locked in a bit for fall delivery, or locked in a price for fall delivery on a little bit of that. A little hesitant in my neck of the woods because we're not exactly a sure crop region. It will be interesting to see. Nobody seems to be able to predict what's going to happen with the Middle East conflict and the Strait of Hormuz And so it's very difficult to predict where oil prices will be, where canola prices will be. But should that conflict come to some conclusion on that Strait open, oil prices will drop, canola prices will drop. $15 or $15 plus per bushel might look good by the time fall rolls around, but it's a very volatile time right now.
Also, late last week, we got word of a private members bill introduced in Ottawa. And there's been a lot of support this week from a lot of farm groups because that private members bill is calling for the speeding up of regulatory approvals, whether it be for pesticides or veterinary supplies and that sort of thing. They're basically saying if it's been approved in the United States or the United Kingdom or the European Union or Australia or New Zealand, Canada should approve it too, so that we're not waiting years and years and years for this. What's your feeling on that, Kevin?
I think it's a marvelous idea. It's been floated a number of times in the past. It's been talked about, and this time it's receiving a lot of attention, but certainly the regulatory framework is holding back Canadian farmers, and we need to do something to move things along more rapidly. This isn't a solution to everything. We really need to get our own approvals moving much more quickly, but as an interim measure, if it's been approved and proven safe in a couple of our trusted trading partners that do extensive testing as well, no reason things shouldn't be allowed here in Canada as well. This is a private members bill, however, and that would, some people would say, oh, private members bills never go anywhere, never get passed. Well, there have been some notable exceptions, and the one on machinery interoperability took a long time, but it did make it through as a private members bill. So if it makes good sense, makes good common sense, perhaps it will see the light of day and will move the needle on regulatory reform.
There was also a story that came out this week, Kevin, regarding Manette Farms, and it sounds like they've filed some paperwork in Calgary Court of King's Bench there.
Exactly, and Manette has been under speculation for a long time. Their land holdings were put on the market for sale, so it was obvious that the company was restructuring, but now has applied for creditor protection, basically. And you read through the long submission to the court, and you get an idea of the scale of Manette's operations: 600 employees, 400,000 acres in Canada and the U.S. But you also get an idea of the scale of their financial troubles. And really, the creditor protection is so that the creditors, the syndicate of creditors, can supply Manette with a large sum of money for spring seeding so they can get a crop in the ground, because if that doesn't happen, the value of all of the assets, mainly the land, is going to decrease. But this is sort of get a crop in the ground, get it harvested, and then there will still be a sale of assets, but the hope is a more orderly sale of assets rather than a fire sale to get the company restructured. And we'll see if the company actually survives in any semblance of its existing form. But right now, a turbulent time, but Manette does have resources, or will have resources, from this syndicate to get a crop in the ground. But I imagine with all this uncertainty, they'll be scrambling.
Also this week, we heard that when it comes to the renegotiation of CUSMA, that the United States is floating the idea of an entry fee, basically saying that Canada would have to agree to put U.S. alcohol back on the shelves again, and also that supply management would be on the table before negotiations can even really begin. What's your take on that, Kevin?
It's hard to know how much credence to give those stories, but it looks like a rocky road ahead for the CUSMA negotiation or renegotiation. You can't believe that the U.S. is going to want any agreement and that doesn't include tariffs on a large part of Canadian exports. I think it's going to be a very rocky and raucous time to get any sort of agreement, and especially any sort of agreement that Canadians can live with and think that they've got a reasonable deal going forward. So stay tuned. It's going to be in the news a lot.
Also this week in Regina, it was announced that the Cargill canola crushing plant is now pretty much open for business. And Ryan, you had a chance to speak with the president of Cargill Canada.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to talk to Jeff Vassert, who's the president of Cargill Canada, and obviously they're looking forward and excited about the fact that the facility is finally operational. The project started in 2022, and it was supposed to open last fall, but there was a little bit of delays due to some economic and construction challenges. So finally, it's operational, and he said that the facility is capable of processing up to 1 million metric tons of canola on an annual basis. So that'll turn into a variety of products, whether that's for canola oil for cooking, for food, or whether it comes to renewable fuels. There's been a lot of talk about that. So that'll help with the domestic supply as well as other products for feedstock or livestock feed and so on and so forth. So lots of products to kind of be produced out of this facility. In terms of benefiting the area, he said that there'll be about 100 jobs between full-time employees and contractors, different types of contractors like truckers and so on. So they're anticipating a busy season ahead. So we'll see how it goes. It'll definitely increase the competition. Another option for farmers to sell their canola to. As we know, in the Yorkton area, there's a couple of facilities there of Richardson International and LDC. So we'll see how it performs in its first year.
Kevin, I guess it's always good to see another domestic crushing location. So perhaps more canola will stay in the country and be processed here.
Certainly, and the amount that we have been processing domestically has been increasing and increasing, and now the majority of canola is crushed here. And I have to be envious of Yorkton and now going to be envious of Regina, because producers that are in reasonable proximity have a pricing advantage. I'm too far away from any crushing plant. Any canola I would grow would go to the export market. And if you're close to a crushing plant and can access that, the domestic market typically pays considerably better. So having another market for canola, and one in an underserved region, probably around Regina, because a lot of canola now grown in southeast Saskatchewan, is a marvelous thing. And it's really our major success story for secondary processing really is canola when you look at all of our commodities.
We also heard this week that Farm Credit Canada released an analysis on the price of fertilizer and how that could affect seeding plans. Ryan, you were on that.
That's right. Yeah, they tried to answer that question, see if that would change any seeding intentions, but they did acknowledge that plans are likely finalized and kind of set in stone. And in most years, farmers would make some small changes if need be, but they kind of believe that it might be a little more so this year, considering the factors that we kind of talked about earlier with the conflict in the Middle East and the trade with the U.S. and the uncertainty around that and so on. But they had a look at some of the seeding intentions and projections from Stats Canada, and they came up with, I believe it was around 5.4 million swing acres. So acres that could change one way or the other, depending on what farmers are willing to change. We know some crops have a little more high input costs than others, so there could be some changes in that regard. One example is when I talked to Lee Anderson of FCC, he said that they could see more canola acres being planted as opposed to spring wheat, just considering the factors that I alluded to earlier. So if anybody wants to have a chance, look at the full report for some context. They can check it out on FCC's website or on saskagtoday.com. Also, an interesting point to mention is hayland acres. As the Canadian cattle herd is kind of expanding here, and we're kind of slowly seeing that trend increase over the last couple of years, we could see more hayland acres, being developed. So kind of keep an eye on that as well. And overall, kind of an interesting report.
Kevin, your take on that report. Have you been talking to very many farmers out there, or have they been changing their seeding plans because of the cost of fertilizer?
I think it's the cost of fertilizer, but beyond that, the price of commodities and how things look in a relative state. The price of fertilizer is extremely high, but most producers had most of their fertilizer bought before the Middle East conflict, or if not bought, at least priced and ready to be picked up. So I'm not sure that it's going to be as big a factor as what commodity prices are and the outlook for where you can get decent returns. I do agree that canola is going to be strong because despite it being a fairly high input crop, those prices do look attractive. So I think it will go up. I would differ with FCC on marginal land. Yes, it would seem to make sense with a larger beef breeding herd that some land would go back into hay or pasture. I just don't see that trend happening. In fact, I still see land being broke up or bush piles, bushes being pushed in, or rock piles being removed to try to get a few extra cropped acres. And I think people are bridging the gap with barley and winter wheat silage and corn silage and things like that on cultivated land rather than seeding more to tame pasture or tame hay and pasture. But a multitude of factors out there, always interesting to look at where the acreage trends may be going. And when we finally get a handle on what does go in the ground, we could get some surprises. The late spring may also change some seeding plans if we see the weather continue to delay operations in the field. There are actually we're a few people going in southwest Saskatchewan. I didn't see an outfit in the field, but stories travel fast, and there were a few producers going in the warm weather, some of those 20-degree days before the weather turned. But usually southwest Saskatchewan is starting to hit full stride at this time of year. There the seeding delays won't be serious, but in some areas seeding delays look like they could be a real problem, and that could influence what producers put in the ground.
All right. And finally, the executive director of the Canadian Agri-Food Trade Alliance, Michael Harvey, was selected to a special group, Ryan, and you had a chance to speak to him about that. I guess they'll be having their first meeting on Monday.
That's right. He was appointed to the federal government's advisory committee on Canada-U.S. economic relations. There's about 25 people as part of this committee, including lots of people from various backgrounds, but a lot's on the agricultural side, actually, once you break it down. Michael Harvey being one of them, with CAFTA. Ralph Goodale's on that board as well. Candice Lang, as well as Ken Seitz, who's the CEO of Nutrients. So really good to see some agricultural representation on that committee. It'll be interesting to see how things kind of turn out in terms of what their mandate's going to be and how long this committee is going to last, because this is made in advance of the CUSMA review, which is set to begin on July 1st. He said that, like you say, the first meeting with Prime Minister Carney and the minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade, Dominic LeBlanc, is set for Monday. So from what Michael was telling me, he's keeping an open mind on the meeting to see where it goes and what they'll be instructed to do. So that's kind of where we're at this point. He's looking forward to it, and considering all the various backgrounds as well, he's looking forward to working with the various people on the committee.
So, Kevin, this committee, it's basically 2 months until negotiations presumably start up on CUSMA. Is this enough time, or what's your feelings on this?
I think a lot of the issues and a lot of the strategies probably already exist, but great to have really a blue ribbon panel of people from across all sectors, including agriculture. They're giving advice and being a backstop behind the scenes. At the end of the day, though, you have to have a willing negotiating partner, and the question is, how willing is the U.S. to actually negotiate and not just try to impose its will?
All right. Well, on that note, that'll do it for this week's edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. On behalf of 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director Ryan Young and the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com Kevin Hirsch, I'm GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director Doug Falconer, saying so long until next time.